Sometimes the changes of scene in the gospel seem almost jarring, as if the gospel authors left the art of transition for those with something less important to say, and just hurried on to the next thing that needed to be communicated. And today it seems like we have three totally different scenes that occur in the gospel. First, we have the Lord teaching his disciples about the passion, predicting his own death and resurrection. And then we have this argument between the disciples along the way. And then lastly, we have this scene with the child. And it seems like they're all different scenes, just kind of cobbled together into one paragraph. We might be tempted to think that. But I think a deeper examination could help us understand how there's actually an interconnection between all of these scenes in the gospel, and it has an important message for us today. And I think we could do no better in our search for this central theme than, oddly enough, asking about the child. Who was, after all, this child that Jesus put his arms around? Well, legend has it that the child was given a new nickname as a result of his embrace with the Lord. Apparently, this kid was always talking about it, and so they called him Theophoros, which in Greek means the one who carries God around, carrying him in his heart, I suppose. We can call him Theo for short, if you like. And Theo grew up as a Christian, and this is where legend ends and sober historical fact begins. Theo's real name was Ignatius, and Ignatius took over as the bishop of Antioch after the apostle Peter left that city to become the bishop of Rome and the first pope of the church. I first met St. Ignatius of Antioch in college, and I say met because his words simply jump off the page. As you read his letters, it seems like he is speaking directly to you, face to face. Admittedly, I was a little bit of a nerd in college, and I was an honors student and taking classes, and one of our classes met in the honors lounge. And before class, I was bored sitting there, and what do nerds do but read books before class? And there off to the side was this beautiful bookshelf with a few random kind of collection of books on the bookshelf, and one of the books was selections from the church fathers. I thought, how interesting, you know. So I take the book from the shelf and begin reading, and I crack open the book to a selection from the letters of St. Ignatius of Antioch. And St. Ignatius, writing already in the first, or towards the end of the first century, about the year 95, wrote to churches letters containing the essential elements of Catholic doctrine and discipline which we still practice today. He urged the first Christians only to attend the Catholic Eucharist, to obey their bishops, priests, and deacons as they would obey Christ, and to submit to the authority of the church. All things we still practice today. This was a man who knew the apostles themselves as friends. At the time, I wasn't a Catholic, and I read his letter, like I said, as if it was addressed to me. I thought, I don't attend the Catholic Eucharist. I have no bishop, deacon, or priest to obey, and the church, well, I'm not a part of it. And eventually I became part of it, as you see, but that's another story. For now, I kept reading Ignatius's letter, and eventually I got to his letter to the Romans. Ignatius's letter to the Romans was written as he was being brought to Rome, as he was traveling to that city, like Peter had done before. But unlike Peter, he was not traveling to Rome to become its bishop. Rather, he was traveling to Rome to become its newest spectacle. That is, Ignatius was chained to a squad of 10 soldiers being led from Antioch to Rome so that he could be cast to the lions in the arena as one of the church's first martyrs. Ignatius was supposed to be humiliated by this journey, and it was supposed to be a big win for the Romans. The celebrity bishop from Antioch, who had become famous for his fiery preaching and his holy life, was defeated, the Romans thought, in irons being dragged to his death. Christ loses, Rome wins, or so the Romans thought. But Ignatius's dreary journey to Rome soon turned into a triumphal procession. He wrote letters to the various churches he passed by on the way, encouraging them in the gospel. And as he grew near to Rome itself, and to his death, he had one great fear. And that great fear was not of the lions or anything else. His great fear was that the Christians in Rome would rise up and cause a disturbance in the city, seeking to defend his life. And so he wrote them a letter pleading with them to let him go to meet the fate that God had decreed for him, to let him meet a martyr's death. And his words, every time I read them, still send a shiver down my spine. He writes, "The time for my birth is close at hand. Forgive me, my brothers. Do not stand in the way of my birth to real life. Do not wish me stillborn. My desire is to belong to God. Do not then hand me back to the world. Do not try to tempt me with material things. Let me attain pure light. Only on my arrival there can I be fully a human being. Give me the privilege of imitating the passion of my God. If you have him in your heart, you will understand what I wish. You will sympathize with me because you will know what urges me on." And those words can speak to us today just as they did to the Romans 2,000 years ago. It is possible, though I see no reason to doubt it, that Ignatius was not the child that Christ embraced in the gospel today. That's a legend, but there's no reason for us to doubt its authenticity. What's certainly true, though, is that Ignatius's life and death is a perfect explanation of what connects all the three stories we have in the gospel today. You see, Ignatius imitated the passion of his God, the passion of our Lord Jesus, which he predicted to his apostles in today's gospel. And Ignatius was so focused on the world to come, his birth to real life, his true birth where he could finally be a human being in the fullest sense, as he put it. He was so focused on his birth through his death that he wouldn't dream of comparing himself to those he walked with along the way. His mind was so focused on the goal that he didn't care who was holier, who was more successful, who was the greatest. He simply loved the Lord and wanted to be with him. There was no comparison with those fellow travelers side by side, except to help them along if they stumbled. And lastly, St. Ignatius looked forward to his death and spoke about it in childlike terms. He spoke of his death as a birth, as a new child of God. And he looked forward to it with the joy that a child expects Christmas morning, a wholehearted focus on that reward which would come after he was killed by the lions of the arena. He had the childlike trust in God, which allowed him to see even the lion's open jaws as a gateway into heaven. And today, more than ever, we all need St. Ignatius's hope and trust, do we not? When our country here below is torn apart by division, when our leaders disappoint us, when even some leaders in the church might disappoint us with what they say or what they do, we need to look to the Lord, to our heavenly homeland, to our true country, where there is no shadow of disappointment or despair. And let me give you a particular example which might strike close to home. Today, in this church and around the Archdiocese of Cincinnati, we're preparing for a program called Beacons of Light. I hope you heard of it. And it will change how our parishes are structured. It might add new parishes here to our family, and it will certainly make all of the parishes here one canonical parish with multiple locations. It might end up changing mass times, and some churches might even close. God forbid here, I'm not making any predictions, but we should be prepared for the worst in some ways. And it could be difficult to get through this time. It will certainly mean quite a bit more work for your pastor, but it will also mean that your life will be, and your weekly routines will be somewhat upended. You may have been attending Mass here for a very long time, and maybe even Mass at a particular time for a while. And so those changes can cause some suffering in your life and may even shake some folks' loyalty to their parishes and even to the Catholic Church. And God forbid that would happen. Because after all, we shouldn't be looking at one parish or another deciding which one is the greatest. Rather, we should be focused on the Lord with childlike confidence and trust that he loves his church, and whatever suffering we go through, the Lord will see us through it to the end and beyond. And the future of this parish, of all of the churches in our region, and in fact all the churches of Cincinnati, in large part depends on us. It depends on how we accept the changes that come our way. Do we complain, kind of fall into rebellion and discord? Or on the other hand, do we have the childlike trust in God which will make us suffer heroically, uniting our own sufferings with Christ's on the cross, and moving it through that to imitate the passion of our God? Because after all, the various threads of meaning in today's gospel are all one. We can only embrace suffering heroically if we have the heart of a child. The sort of hope that sees even the lion's jaws as a gateway to heaven, as St. Ignatius did. Or the sort of trust in God that led Christ to cry out on the cross as he died in agony, "Father, into your hands I commend my spirit." Whatever comes our way, whatever suffering the Lord might give to us, we can trust that it is all for our good, having the childlike love of our Father in heaven, who will satisfy our every need.